Good morning. Well, morning for me. Very good. It's very good to be here.
Good evening from Mumbai. This is Govind. So I'm looking at you on a monitor which I'm facing, and which is, and the monitor is sort of against the audience, and the screen on which the audience is looking at you is behind me. So, I mean, maybe it doesn't matter at all, but just to give you a background. Okay,
Right.
so before I come to the exciting part of our conversation, or what I hope is exciting, the reason we've really come together today is the book that you've launched called The 7 Rules of Trust, Why It Is Today's Most Essential Superpower. So I'm going to ask you, like everyone else does, why you wrote this book. But before we come to that, I'm sure not everyone in the audience knows why you set up Wikipedia and that you had something similar, or you attempted something similar even before that, before you launched Wikipedia. So tell us about that.
Yeah, great. Well, first of all, I'm really sad to not be there. The bureaucracy and the getting the visa, it was a shame. I love visiting India, and I was looking forward to it. Instead, I'm just here in my basement office where I work every day and talking to you. So the original concept behind Wikipedia was born from looking at the growth of free software, open source software, and seeing programmers coming together to collaborate in new ways. And I realized that kind of collaboration could extend beyond just software into all kinds of cultural works. Had the idea for the encyclopedia, had no idea how to do it. So started a project called Newpedia, which was very top-down, very academic, very traditional in terms of editorial board, and there was a 7-stage review process to get anything published. And truthfully, we gathered quite a lot of great people who were very excited about the vision, but the system was too hard, too complicated, and not very fun. And so as I was seeing that this was not going to work, came across the idea of Wiki. One of my employees showed me a Wiki, and we thought, okay, well, let's try this Wiki thing. And so we opened the Wiki, actually named it Wikipedia, because we were afraid that the academics we had gathered wouldn't like the whole Wiki, so we put it as a side project. But that side project was very, very quickly and very obviously the way to go. We got more work done in about 2 weeks than we had in almost 2 years. So it was very exciting in those early days. You might be the first person to have the opportunity to type Mumbai is a city in India, and you would hit save, and okay, it's not very much of an encyclopedia, but you got something started, and you would find someone else in the community would come and add another fact, and then we would check each other's work, and so on and so forth. And that fun of editing Wikipedia collaboratively is still, what it's all about today. But of course, in those early days, it was all open and all, we had no real rules. We had, the idea of what we wanted to do was always the same: a really good quality encyclopedia, neutral, explaining the world. But yeah, that's kind of how we got started.
Right, and there's been obviously a journey which has brought you to this point. Walk us through some of the statistics in terms of the latest numbers, because I know in your book you talk about early 2025, in terms of how many people come to your website, how many articles there are posted today. What's the kind of activity that goes on at any point of time on Wikipedia?
Yeah, so it's really enormous. We have tens of billions of page views every month. Like 1.5 billion to 2 billion devices see Wikipedia every month. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that's individual people, because lots of people come on their computer and their phone in the course of a month. We've got over 300 languages in Wikipedia. So obviously, English is the largest language version of Wikipedia, but we have huge projects across many languages. We have all the major languages of India, for example, although some of those projects are still quite small, but I mean, we've got lovely communities working to build Wikipedia across all those languages. So it's really, we're everywhere. And, we've become known globally as one of the top brands that everybody in the world knows, which is kind of fun because we're just a bunch of nerds sitting like I do in my basement trying to edit Wikipedia.
And tell us about why you wrote this book now.
So, we've seen across the world a global decline in trust. So, if you look at the Edelman Trust Barometer survey, which is a long-running, decades-long survey about trust in many, many countries around the world, we are in a crisis of trust. We see trust in journalism has fallen, trust in politicians, trust in all kinds of institutions, and to some degree, trust in each other. And of course, there are a lot of negative side effects when we lose trust. Lots of things in business, for example, become much more complicated, much more difficult if we can't just trust other people. Obviously, we all know the difficulties. If we don't trust journalism, then we end up without a shared set of facts that we can all understand, and that's really important. Also, Wikipedia, of course, grew from in the early days to being not at all trusted. People kind of thought it was sort of a joke or something, to one of the more trusted things across the world. Even though Wikipedia isn't perfect, and we're always the first to say, yes, we need to, if we get criticism, I always think our best response is to say, well, let's look at this and let's see what we can do to fix it. How can we be better? And so we've learned a lot of lessons about trust over the years. I mean, in particular, Wikipedia itself, by its nature, is very trusting. Like anybody can come and join us, and anybody can start editing. You can edit most pages of Wikipedia without even logging in. That's an amazing thing. And that's really crucial to building trust over time.
And things have changed. I mean, you refer to the Edelman Trust Barometer. One reason why trust is falling or manifested in the way that you perhaps are referring to in the book is because of polarization. And the figures, I don't know which figures you were referring to when you were just saying this, but clearly most countries, 42% for instance, 28 countries felt divided. In the US, it's 68% feel that there is division. When people say that they're divided, which means they fundamentally don't agree with what the other person's point of view or fact is, the entire proposition of a Wikipedia is under threat, isn't it?
Well, it does make things a bit more difficult in certain areas. I mean, one of the things that's, when we think about this crisis of trust, it's sort of the polarization is caused by the lack of trust, and the lack of trust increases because of polarization. So it's kind of a negative spiral that feeds on itself. But, it turns out that a lot of ordinary people are still, very willing to trust, very willing, even in these polarized times, to say, okay, look, we may not agree on some political issue, but we can find a shared common ground. What are the facts we can agree on? How do we describe those facts? And often the important thing is to just step back a level and say, okay, even though we don't agree, we can agree on at least what are the different sides? Can we describe the argument in a way that we both think is fair? That's very often the best technique for us, is to say, look, I always give the example of a kind and thoughtful Catholic priest and a kind and thoughtful birth control advocate, and they may not agree. They may understand they're never going to agree on some fundamental issues, but they can agree to say, oh, well, the Catholic Church position on abortion is this, and critics have responded like that, and this and that and the other, and let's explore how it's looked at all around the world. And people of good faith can do a really good job of that, even though in some areas, for example, in social media, you get the idea, oh, we're all at each other's throats and everybody that can't agree on anything. But no, that's not how normal people are. Normal people are like, okay, yeah, I disagree, but let's work on this. Let's write down, at least, what are the things we can agree on.
So the basis for that, which is the disagreement on what we agree on or do not agree on, also comes or boils down to your use of facts and where you source them from. And,
yes.
And before I come to that, walk us through what the process is like today. I mean, in terms of, when someone posts something, and particularly if it's a slightly contentious issue. Because if in your book too, you talk about, it's the obscure issues where things are fine, nothing happens, right? Things could go uncorrected, unchanged for the good and bad for a long time, maybe even years. But it's in the contentious issues It could be, Israel-Hamas. It could be abortion in the United States. It could be the map of India. And that's where the real big fights break out.
Yeah, definitely. Like these are the issues where we spend a lot of our time really thinking about how can we make these better? What are the things that we need to do? So I'll describe the ideal scenario first. So the ideal scenario is that people of goodwill come together and they look at all the different range of sources and they figure out what are the quality sources, what are the things that we can include, shouldn't include because they're kind of irrelevant and so forth, and begin to find some shared sense of understanding about how to describe this difficult issue. Obviously, what happens in many cases is emotions can run high, and that's always a problem in terms of getting people to calm down and work together effectively. So we sometimes have to temporarily lock pages. The community handles all this, not from on high, but the community temporarily lock pages. Have long discussions about very specific details and so forth. It isn't easy, but I think it's when we're doing a great job where we can really shine, where people say, wow, I didn't know, how to understand this issue. I know people are very upset about it. And now I've gone through and I actually get like where the different sides, what's coming from, that Wikipedia shouldn't be trying to push me in one direction, but should just describe the controversy neutrally. Now, oftentimes I feel, sometimes we don't get there. Sometimes actually the pages can be biased and do need further attention and further work. And I think that's just part of what we have to embrace, is to always have a spirit of how do we get better? How do we step back and say, okay, we're not accommodating everything? And that's never easy.
So Larry Sanger, who is variously called your co-founder or someone you hired, maybe you want to explain that, but he says that, and he made a list saying that most of your sources, or rather Wikipedia sources, are more left-leaning, and the right-leaning are really ignored. So the example he gave was outlets like Fox News, New York Post, Newsmax have been designated as generally unreliable or blacklisted. Liberal outlets like Mother Jones, MSNBC, New Republic, all in the United States, are listed as reliable. So his point was that it's a pretty bad system, generally speaking. He also goes on to give a 9-point recipe on what Wikipedia should do. But I'd like your response on that point, on coming back to the source of facts.
Well, I mean, I think broadly the list of sources is advisory only. It's a summary of past discussions and things like this. What we look for in terms of reliable sources is, quality in the old-fashioned sense, quality, journalistic process, willingness to run error corrections. The idea that the list of sources excludes, all conservative sources is just not true. I mean, certainly if you think the Wall Street Journal is a, left-wing, woke publication, then okay, then I can't really help you. But the truth is, one of the problems that we have, and this is, we're talking here mainly about English Wikipedia. One of the problems is there are a lot of very low quality outlets these days that are populist right-wing. And the issue isn't about their politics. The issue is really about the low quality, the clickbait headlines and the errors and things like this. I do think, again, like all of these things, these lists and things like this, they need to be looked at again and again and again by the community to say, look, have we got it wrong? Like, if a specific source is considered deprecated, which just means we always prefer to find a better source, then okay, why? Is that still the case? Have they changed their policies? Are there ways of improving? Is there any suggestion or evidence that people have argued for it to be excluded as a source because they don't like what it says? That's terrible. Like, that shouldn't happen. But can it happen? Of course, we're human beings. And so, I think the most important thing is that spirit of trying to always think about, okay, how do we improve? How do we make things better so that we can gain the trust of people on all sides of the political spectrum who can read Wikipedia and feel confident that we haven't just told them one side of the story. That would not be living up to our mission.
So Sangar's 9-point plan includes ending decision-making by consensus, which he says is institutional fiction. He wants competing articles, abolish source blacklists, revive the original neutrality policy, let the public rate articles, end indefinite blocking, adopt a legislative process, and so on. So is that any of that you agree with?
I mean, most of it I don't agree with, and I don't think he hasn't been involved in the I don't know why we're even talking about him, to be honest. He hasn't been involved in the project since the very early days, so he doesn't really, in my view, have a full grasp of what's going on in the community. And so, but there's a few things there that I do think are somewhat, I think they're intriguing ideas. So one of the ones that I do like is the idea of letting the public rate articles, not that it would directly change anything on the site, but it would give us some insight into what do readers think. And of course, things like voting, they can be easily gamed. Someone creates hundreds of accounts just to click no on something. So you have to be very careful about filtering that incoming commentary and so forth, and really find ways of saying, okay, now we feel like these are legitimate users who are in good faith, rating articles, and what are they telling us? Are they saying that this area is biased? Is this something we should look at? And things like that. I do think that would be valuable, because sometimes it's quite hard for us to get a read on, what do the readers think? Are the readers unhappy about something? And sometimes we'll look at it and we'll say, well, a lot of the readers are unhappy, but they're mistaken, that actually we think the article is good. In other cases, we might go, oh yeah, actually this has brought attention on something. So I do think that's quite important and quite good.
Right, so let me pick up a few lines from Wikipedia's own page about criticism within Wikipedia. So this is about criticism that you yourself are documenting about you. So this says that the free online encyclopedia of Wikipedia, very sort of, it's appreciable how distant it is, has been criticized for content, community of volunteer editors, process and rules. Critics have questioned its factual reliability, readability and organization of its articles, lack of methodical fact-checking, and its political bias. More concerns about systemic bias along gender, racial, political, corporate, institutional, and national lines, apart from other kinds of conflicts of interest. So this is your own Wikipedia saying this about you.
Yeah. So when we go back to the 7 rules of trust, one of the rules is about transparency, and we say, be transparent even when you have something to hide. So we could have a page on Wikipedia about Wikipedia that just tells you all the positive things, but we have this page, Criticism Wikipedia, where we say, frankly, like, here's the things we've been criticized for. Here are the elements of that criticism. Here's what the arguments have been made. Here's some academic research which shows some of it's true, some of it's not true, et cetera, et cetera. Because that's the only way to build trust, is to say, look, we're completely open, we're completely willing to examine our own flaws and to think about how we can improve. It would be a silly sort of thing if we said we're going to be an encyclopedia, but we're going to be biased about ourselves and sort of hide our faces and pretend things are fine when they aren't. So for me, that's a fantastic testament to how the system actually works, is to say, look, here's all the flaws. Come and help us. We need help to fix it.
But the editing is anonymous, isn't it? I mean, and maybe that is one of the fundamental problems that critics have pointed out.
Yeah, it isn't really that anonymous. I mean, within the community, we know each other. We know loads of people. I mean, you don't necessarily use your your actual name when editing Wikipedia. You go by a user ID, but we're pseudonymous. So people have pseudonyms and they write, and everything is accountable. So people can see your entire past history of all your edits, and whether you're Joe Bob 123 or you're using your real name doesn't really have much impact. And it certainly is not. It's not. When we look at the issues in Wikipedia, anonymity turns out to not be a problem. That isn't an issue that we have. It really, where you see broadly across the internet anonymity being a problem is when you have one-off interactions. So people, like on Twitter, for example, some trolls there. They're just screaming at you. There's no life history. There's nothing that happens to them. In Wikipedia, if you just come in and you're being anonymous and you're being a troll and you're yelling at people and you're not being constructive, people can see your history very quickly and you'll get blocked by the community. Say, look, you're not here to help build an encyclopedia. So anonymity, we think, is actually not a problem, and indeed is something really positive about Wikipedia. We have people editing Wikipedia from very difficult parts of the world. People who are editing in countries where speaking the simple truth can get you arrested, where you're editing some sensitive topic in a perfectly fair way that we think is great, but you could, have a lot of problems if the government saw you doing that. So people using a pseudonym and using a VPN for privacy, we think is very important.
And I'm going to come back to the process in a moment, but you talked about people doing this in difficult conditions. One of the examples you've quoted in your book is this boy in Ukraine. And, and in many parts of the world, there's war, there is strife, conditions are difficult, and yet people do this. So after all these years, almost 25, what's your sense on why people are driven to do this essentially free of cost and sacrifice time that they could be doing something else with?
So there's a few reasons. So one, people just find it fun and interesting. So if you're a interested geek who loves some particular area of history or science or whatever it might be, you can learn more about it, but also you can meet other people who have the same interests as you. So people who are working in, wiki project about the history of Japan, for example, they will meet other people who are interested in the history of Japan, and they work together, and it's fun because you say, well, in my normal day-to-day life, I don't meet anybody who has my same shared passion, so that's really important. And then the other is that, when you've spent an afternoon working on Wikipedia, maybe you're all
okay.
Well, yeah, you've had fun, but you also feel like I left the world a little bit better, and I feel like this was a productive use of my time.
Right. And which brings us back to the process itself, and I want to link it to trust. The whole process of Wikipedia works well when there is trust, as in people believe the process. People believe what you believe about your neutrality, whether it's Jimmy Wales or the entire 260,000, if I got the number right, volunteers who are with you. But it falls apart when people don't believe you, or don't, and they don't even believe the process, maybe for reasons of polarization and the way things are today. So how do you rebuild at a time like this, when everything is questioned and people essentially, do not give any credence to what is there or written there?
Yeah, no, I think this is the crucial crisis of our time, and all of the 7 rules of trust are designed to think about and talk about, like, what are the steps that we can take in society and in every aspect to begin to rebuild a more trusting society. So in the book, we have some very interesting case studies of, for example, Airbnb, which is a company that had a real crisis of trust early in their history because they hadn't really thought about trust. They hadn't thought about that as an aspect of it. They were, my diagnosis of the reason is they were young tech bros, and they weren't worried about certain things that other people would be worried about because young men don't worry about certain things. And they realized, wow, okay, hold on. If people feel like if they put their apartment on Airbnb to rent it out and it's going to get destroyed and the company won't do anything about it, no one's going to do this. We won't have a business. And so they had to really go through and think about every aspect of the business, every aspect of the product. How do we build trust at every step on the way so people can feel comfortable with this? And, it's an amazing story because inviting someone to come and stay in your home is an enormous act of trust. And, if they can do it, if they can build, as they have, a very successful global business, then there's great lessons for all of us to think about, okay, what are the things that they did? What are the things that other companies have done? What are the historical factors that go into building and rebuilding trust? So, for example, in the book, we interview Christiane Amanpour and Tom Friedman, so important journalists who are widely considered trustworthy, to get their take on, okay, what's gone wrong in journalism and media, and how do we build trust there? Because that's also incredibly important. When we think about this polarization issue, people read, one side, a newspaper that has one view or a newspaper that has another view. What can both those sides do to build trust, not only in from the people who agree with them, but the people who disagree and so forth? And we show, for example, that there's some great research showing that if a newspaper endorses political candidates, it reduces trust not only with the people who disagree with them, but also the people who agree with them. Say, oh, now I trust the newspaper a little less because I feel like they might be just campaigning for their candidate, who I also like, but that isn't what I want. I want to understand the world in a factual way. So I think there's a lot of things that we need to view. And so the whole point of the book is, let's put this back on the agenda. Let's have a big conversation about it globally, get a lot of people in leadership thinking about trust. How do we improve trust? How do we build to be even better?
I'll come to the endorsement aspect in a moment, but aren't there two kinds of trust here? So you talked about Airbnb, and where people could land up in a stranger's home, and strangers in turn treat or greet strangers and welcome them into their homes across continents. You've talked about Uber, where you could typically jump into a stranger's car and then get driven off. And that's one kind of trust, where, again, if I would extend it to e-commerce, people buy things on sites where, sometimes are far away, you don't know. But that trust doesn't seem to have diminished or receded, whereas the trust you are talking about in the context of your book and what Wikipedia is facing is diminishing and is being hammered in a way. So why is that?
Well, I mean, I think in different aspects of society, like that, the trust in journalism has been on decline. And I think journalism needs to do what Airbnb did and say, wait a minute, we've got this problem with trust. What are the things we need to do? Let's take a trust inventory. Let's figure out, like, what have successful organizations done to build and extend trust? Because there are things that can be done, very simple things that I would recommend, in terms of really thinking about, because ultimately trust, there is only one kind of trust. Like, trust just means, I'm not going to fully check up on every single thing that you do, because I'm going to trust that you're going to do the right thing. And obviously there's limits to that and so on and so forth. But we can get back to a culture of trust, but we have to be serious about it.
So in your mind, what are the 2 or 3 main reasons journalism doesn't enjoy the trust it used to, if it used to?
But I think there's a couple of things that have happened. So one, the business model of journalism has been under extreme pressure for a long time, particularly local journalism. It's become very, very difficult. The old model of selling newspapers and display ads and classified ads and so on, that model has broken down, and the new models are just beginning to replace. So we're seeing a rise in subscription models. That's very helpful. Because what happens is, if you have a bad business model, you are forced to try and get as many clicks as possible. And it turns out the way to do that is inflammatory reporting and clickbait headlines and so forth. It's not healthy. And I think people have underestimated that not only is it not healthy in the short run, it diminishes trust in your product in the long run. And that's a real problem. Other things, as a part of this, media becoming more and more partisan, again, reduces trust. It may help you in the short run, but it isn't fundamentally a good business in the long run, because people say, well, I read this paper, but I don't necessarily believe it, and that's a problem.
You talked about Twitter, and I guess Elon Musk is a live subject and the elephant in the room in some ways. So he's called you Wikipedia, as in maybe comprising and controlled by wokes. That's one. The other thing is, of course, he's launched Grokipedia, which has just launched and is driven by algorithms, which is almost the exact opposite of the volunteer model that Wikipedia has. So how do you respond to that? And could an algorithm model be more, let's say, precise and accurate?
So certainly right now, if we look at the technology as it exists today, large language models are not reliable. They're not trustworthy. They have a terrible hallucination problem. They just make things up that sound very plausible. And the fact that they sound very plausible is actually one of the more dangerous things, because you don't necessarily, if a large language model told you that Donald Trump was the first person to go to Mars, you would say, hold on a minute, that's outrageous. Like, that's clearly not true. But if it tells you something that's subtly wrong, you may believe it because it sounds like it's completely plausible, makes up a whole biography. So, I mean, I enjoy asking large language models about my childhood because a little bit is known publicly, but not much. And so it just makes up all kinds of fascinating but completely false things. So that's a problem. And we know that this is where the state of the technology is today, is that you can't trust it. At the same time, of course, I'm very interested in how can the technology be used in a way to help us identify problems, or, like I've made a little script personally where I can feed in a short Wikipedia entry and the sources that are listed and say, oh, is there anything in the sources that should be in Wikipedia but isn't, or anything in Wikipedia that's not supported by the sources? And actually, it makes decent suggestions. It's not perfect, and I'm continuing to work to improve that. This is just my own hobby. A lot of people in our community and a lot of people at the Wikimedia Foundation, our machine learning team, are working on these kinds of ideas, because it would be foolish to say, oh, the models aren't trustworthy and reliable yet, so they're useless. No, they can't do everything. They can't write a Wikipedia entry from scratch, but they can look at two texts and give you a suggestion that actually seems pretty good most of the time and worth maybe trying and testing. So, I'm not too worried about Grokipedia, because, Elon's idea of neutrality sadly seems to be it should say everything that he believes, and that's not necessarily what most people will find trustworthy. But yeah, it's an interesting project for sure.
Right. And yet, he with more than 200 million followers on Twitter has been attacking Wikipedia in one way or the other. So, which in turn also links to the polarization that we're seeing. I mean, essentially, I don't agree with you, I don't think, but let's say the megaphone is with someone like Elon Musk right now, which I'm assuming is not something that's good for Wikipedia.
I mean, it's not good. No, of course. We would rather have Elon Musk on side, I suppose. I don't think we really care all that much, though. Like, one of the important values that I do talk about in the book is the importance of independence. And in our context, intellectual independence is really important. Like, I don't think people would increase their trust of Wikipedia if every time Elon said some crazy thing, we rush to appease him or make him happy, because that's not really what we're all about. We've designed things so that we don't have funding from governments, so governments can't pressure us. We have minimal funding from billionaires. Like, the vast majority of the money for Wikipedia is from small donors giving their $20, 20 euros, whatever the amount might be. And that means that we don't have to worry. Like, Elon can stomp his foot all he wants, but we're just going to carry on trying to make Wikipedia better.
And you said recently that we'll be here in 100 years and he won't.
Yes, that's right.
What gives you that confidence?
I mean, again, it's about the design of how we've structured the finances. We're very careful with money. We build our reserves. We think about the long term all the time. And I think that's really important, is to build things that last, as the book says, is to say, look, we have the ability to weather a storm. And of course, when Elon Musk said, in one of his tweets, he said, defund Wikipedia, we had a huge surge in donations that day because people don't agree with Elon. And they're like, hold on a second. We love Wikipedia. We need to support it in the face of a world which is increasingly dominated by a very small group of billionaires throwing their weight around. To say, no, actually, open, democratic, intellectual inquiry is super important, and we need to double down on that.
We touched upon AI and LLMs. Is there a larger threat now, at least it seems to me as a user, that when you search for something, Wikipedia had a distinct moniker, and you knew that Wikipedia was there and you would be led to it. Today, LLMs are, whether it's Gemini or maybe even Grokipedia, are swallowing that. I mean, you don't see that as a user now, or seeing less and less of that. So is that also a threat, or at least it seems to me a big threat?
I mean, it's possible. I mean, one of the things that's very interesting is because all the large language models are very much trained on Wikipedia data, what we find, so there was a Pew Research study that showed that in Google search results, the top 10, the traditional search results, Wikipedia is linked in the first page 3% of the time, but in the AI summaries, Wikipedia is linked 6% of the time. So we're getting a lot more links to Wikipedia. Of course, if it's in the AI summary, probably the summary gave you the answer you needed, so you may not click through. But we are seeing more links to Wikipedia, and I think that balances to some extent this issue. The other thing is people are using large language models for all kinds of things that you wouldn't use Wikipedia for. I use large language models for cooking. I love to cook. I consider myself a reasonably good cook. And so I'll ask for recipes, I'll ask for some details and things like this about technique, and it's pretty good. But I would never go to Wikipedia for that. Wikipedia doesn't really have recipes. It's not what I use it for. Or if I'm coming to Mumbai for the literary festival, I would say, tell me some things I should do while I'm in Mumbai. What are the major sites I should? Of course, I can go and dig in Wikipedia for that. It's not a travel advice site. So I think there's a lot of things that don't compete with Wikipedia that large language models are good at.
And I'm going to come to what the future is looking like in a moment. But when you think of the original design of Wikipedia, and I think as I listen, and I'm sure everyone here is listening, they've got a sense on what your first principles are, to use Elon Musk's famous term. Has that changed? And is that going to change further now, particularly in this post-Trump world?
No, I mean, the basics of Wikipedia have never changed. We have the same policies on neutrality. We have the same desire to be high quality, fact-based, etc. We have this commitment to this community process. So those things have always been true for Wikipedia, and I don't think those are going to change. I think we will see some change around the edges. I mean, I've talked already about some ideas around using large language models as a tool to support the community, to help us with our work. Obviously, we'll adapt to technology over time. We know a big transition that has happened already is like more people are viewing Wikipedia from mobile devices than from desktop. So that means little boring things, about the interface and how does the website work, making sure it works good on mobile. But those are the kind of things that obviously we do change, but the fundamentals should never change. Wikipedia should always be about Wikipedia is an encyclopedia. We're aiming at quality, etc.
And you talked about how donations spiked after you were attacked by Elon Musk. So tell us about what the business model is like, and
Sure.
have you had your Death Valley moments when you've been struggling to put together funds to keep the servers running and so on?
Well, so in the early days, because Wikipedia is a child of the dot-com boom, really, I didn't really have a clear idea about the business model. This was a project, something I was passionate about doing. How to fund it was an open question. We didn't know. And indeed, the first time we did a fundraiser where we asked the public to donate money, Wikipedia was in the nonprofit structure. We are a charity, and we didn't know, is this going to work? Are we going to need to go out and find some billionaires to fund us? Are we going to have to partner with a university? Or will the public support? And I was hoping to raise $20,000 within 1 month, and instead we raised $30,000 within about 2 weeks. So it was a huge success that we were able to buy our first big batch of new servers and things like this. And so since then, the fundraising has always been okay. We have to take it seriously, obviously, and we have to ask for money, but we find that the model works really well, and that what works really well about it is those small donations, as I talked about. It's really important for our intellectual independence that we're, our market, so to speak, that we need to please is the general public, millions and millions of people who say, yeah, this is worth my contribution. So it's worked for us, and we're happy about that. It's really a great model because it helps sustain the work.
And where do your donations primarily come from? What would be the top 4 or 5 countries? And do you know more about the people who are donating?
Yeah, so the top countries are the U.S. The U.S. has a strong culture of charitable donations that is just historically Americans do that quite a lot. Europe, obviously, Japan, India. We have a lot of donations from India, from all around the world, really. And who is donating to Wikipedia? Well, it's just largely all kinds of people. Like it's people who read Wikipedia and they enjoy it and they love it. And what we find is the most powerful messages that we have to get people to donate are really about reciprocity. It's about saying, oh, well, you use it all the time. You should probably chip in. And most people say, oh, yeah, that sounds fair. Like I do. I love Wikipedia. I'm on there all the time. I feel bad if I don't chip in a little bit of money. It's worth it to me.
Right, and we're going to come to questions in a minute. Tell us about a current issue which has vexed you in some ways. I mean, because you can see, I mean, maybe it's the terror attack by Hamas against Israel a couple of years ago or something else. But I mean, something that's, you wish we could have better control on, and you wish there was more, high quality factual contribution and so on.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously, Israel-Palestine, that's always a big issue. It's always has been, always will be. It is a vexatious issue. It's very hard to write about. But I'm also, the things that I worry more about in the long run have to do with, local journalism, I think, is a real crisis. And it's not one that occupies most of our attention most of the time. But I think people are aware. In some ways, it would be easier to write about a small city in the years of 1990 to 2000 than in the years from 2020 until today, because maybe the local newspaper's gone and nobody's actually doing the original journalism that's so important to history and so forth. So I think that's one of the problems that I do worry quite a lot about, and I think is something that will need to change in the future. We need to find a way, and I wish I had a magic answer for you. How do we bring back local journalism? I think it's really important, and I think it will happen because people do miss it, and people really want to understand what's going on in their local community, and they want journalists keeping an eye on the politicians to make sure they're being honest and all of that. And I think that's a big issue for me.
Right, okay. Questions from the audience? Yes. Right, where are the microphones? Okay, can you start there? Yeah. Short questions, please, yeah.
Hello. Hi, Jimmy. You said
Hello.
Wikipedia not necessarily filter out the right-wing sources. Wikipedia filter out the low-quality sources. But what defines the quality is the community. So if the community is heavily owned by the left wingers, they will call the right wing sources low quality. But if the community is more from the right wingers,
yeah,
they will call the left wing sources low quality. So how would you tackle that?
Okay, Jimmy, I'm going to take 2 or 3 questions and then come back. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Yes. Here.
Yeah, thank you. This is an indirect question about succession planning. There was a famous book called The Cathedral and the Bazaar. Since you said Wikipedia was inspired by the open source movement, software and Linux and so on. So there are 2 gentlemen, Richard Stallman and Linus Torvalds. And sort of this was, captured in a book called The Cathedral and the Bazaar. You know about it, right? I mean, this is one model.
There's a reference in the book as well.
One model is where there's a priest at the top. His name may be Richard Stallman. It could be Jimmy Wales. Which is Jimmy Wales Richard Stallman, or is he Linus Torvalds? And what's the succession plan beyond Jimmy?
Okay, one more. I've interviewed Richard Stallman, a very interesting character. Okay. Yes, at the back. Is there a mic there?
Hello. I wanted to ask, do you face pressure from governments to change facts on your pages or certain parts of your pages? And how do you deal with that?
Yeah. We've seen high courts in India, for example. Yeah, go ahead, Jimmy. I think
Yeah.
the first question was about, I mean, who decides
Yeah.
what is low quality?
Yeah. So I think that the issue of community health, as I call it, is really important. And having a diversity in the community, an intellectual diversity. So one of the problems with Elon Musk's attack on Wikipedia is he's mistaken. If you think Wikipedia has been hijacked by left-wing activists, generally speaking, you're wrong. I know loads of Wikipedians. I know the community. Broadly, that isn't how it's working. And at the same time, what I say is, like, if you send the message that Wikipedia has been taken over by left-wing activists, then you're telling kind and thoughtful conservatives that they shouldn't go to Wikipedia because it won't be pleasant. And you're also telling left-wing activists that Wikipedia is their new home, and then we have to deal with them, and it's very annoying. Like, we don't want those people in Wikipedia. We want people who are willing and able to work collaboratively and to try and see all sides of the issue and do our very best to be neutral and to be thoughtful about things. So that's something that I focus a lot of attention on, the Wikimedia Foundation. Like, how do we make sure the community is healthy, happy, doing a great job? And when we have problems, it has to be top of our agenda to address those problems. Succession planning, so we're very much a bazaar, not a cathedral, and that's by design. I sometimes compare my role in Wikipedia to being like Queen Elizabeth II, i.e. it's a very symbolic role. I don't directly make decisions about content, about rules, about these kinds of things. And so hopefully, the important thing is that the Wikimedia Foundation is stable, great leadership. We've got community leaders who are very thoughtful and very kind. So hopefully I become irrelevant to the process over a long period of time. And in the meantime, I view my role as more about reminding people about the beautiful ideas of Wikipedia and how do we get there, and to really focus on that. And then do we place pressure from governments? Well, sometimes. We do, but not so much for the most part. We've had some occasional incidents where, for example, we were banned in Turkey for about 3 years, and we fought all the way to the Supreme Court and won. So now Wikipedia is available in Turkey again. We're quite proud of that decision. We are blocked in China, have been for a long time, because China wants editorial control, and that's not something that we're at all willing to do. But for the most part, it's, most governments really understand, like, Wikipedia is trying to be neutral, trying to be factual. It's a good community. There are these instances of spot, issues here and there, but broadly, it's not something that we think is the most important issue. It's a very important issue, but our view has always been very principled. We will not censor Wikipedia for the pleasure of any government. That's just not right. People have a fundamental human right to access to knowledge, and so we will fight for that.
Right, and so to pick up on the succession point, how many people work in Wikipedia, as in who are paid employees of Wikipedia, and what does the top deck look like after you?
So there's, 700, 800 employees. I should know the number a little more accurately, but I don't actually work at the foundation. That's an interesting part of my role. I'm a volunteer, so I'm just me, and I, sit at home and do my work and so forth. So, the structure, it's an interesting structure. So we have local chapters all around the world, which are independent nonprofits, and they just handle, they don't run the website, but they handle, support the local community and do partnerships with galleries, archives, libraries, museums, that sort of thing. They help with local press interest in Wikipedia, because often if the press, rings us about something that happened in, Japanese Wikipedia, well, we're not going to know, so we need a local chapter to help deal with that. At the Wikimedia Foundation, it's pretty traditional nonprofit. We've got a CEO and, the board, and we've got staff members who are working on software development and things like that. So it's pretty, it's all very transparent. And I think the important thing is that the Wikimedia Foundation doesn't get involved in the content. It's not a top-down editorial process. where they are deciding who the editors of various areas are, things like that. It just doesn't work that way.
And just to sort of come back to that, you have no executive role in Wikipedia at all, or never did?
That's
or
right. Pretty much never did. I mean, from very early on, after the creation of the Wikimedia Foundation, what I enjoy doing is leading the community and working with the community, and I'm not a very good manager. So unlike many founders, I don't have a inflated sense that I'm the best person to manage everything inside the foundation. I would not be very good at that. My idea of management is just say, yeah, go, I trust you. Like, let's make something amazing together. Turns out, actually, employees want a little bit more guidance and a little bit more structure than that. And so we have great people who are involved in the management of the organization. But yeah, I'm not an employee, and my role is sort of unusual. It's like the difference between the prime minister and the monarch. You know, I don't have power. I'm just this symbolic figure who has a voice.
I mean, that's, yeah, I mean, you're being quite modest, if I may say. Questions, yes?
This is a slightly philosophical question, but what do you think of the value of knowledge for knowledge's sake versus knowledge you can apply in your everyday life directly?
Okay.
You know, yeah. Oh, you're going to get a few?
Yeah, I'll collect a few.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Hi, Jimmy, and hi, Govindraj. I want to ask Jimmy, what age demographic provides most volunteers, and do you see a difference in children? Do they or do they not volunteer?
Okay, age of volunteers. Yes.
Hi, Jimmy. My question is about a larger media crisis which we are everywhere facing about the trust, is that you're seeing facts now somewhere being mixed with opinions, and that somewhere is also reflected on the pages of Wikipedia, especially if you're going for a person's specific pages. So what kind of filtration process or what kind of challenges you personally seeing when facts get mixed with opinions and views, and that creates sort of like a blurry line for,
Sure.
distrust?
Okay, anyone else?
Okay.
Yeah. At the back.
Hi, my question is how good is Wikipedia for scouting medical information? I come from that background, so yeah.
Yeah, the book has an interesting chapter on that. So anyway, go ahead, Jimmy. The first question was about value of knowledge.
Yeah, so knowledge for knowledge's sake versus practical knowledge is, I mean, it's a fascinating topic to me. Now, of course, it's not as simple as a simple dichotomy, because some knowledge is both. Sometimes it's towards one end of the scale to another, and so forth. I'm just very passionate about knowledge of all kinds. So Wikipedia tends to be more about the maybe knowledge for knowledge's sake. You won't find how-to guides in Wikipedia, and there's a lot of practical things. Like I mentioned earlier, I love to cook, and cooking is a very practical skill. But knowledge of the different food items from around the world, and the history of different cuisines, and also the chemistry of cooking, this is all important, and it's part of learning to be a good cook, is having that background knowledge, but also it doesn't get you there. You need the practical instruction and so forth. So I think both are very valuable, and Wikipedia is more about just the basic background knowledge. Age demographic for volunteers, it's all over the map. We do have teenagers. When you say children, you have to be 13 to be editing Wikipedia, and we don't see people very young editing Wikipedia, but sometimes late teens. We have some fantastic volunteers, and I tell the story in the book of one of the most respected Wikipedians, Emily Temple Wood, who started when she was quite young and started by vandalizing Wikipedia, and then somebody was nice to her about it, and she felt so moved by that she wanted to make it up to the world for the vandalism she had done, and became a really fantastic Wikipedian. I would say as a community, we're probably getting older, because a lot of us have been doing this for a long time, so we do have to focus on the younger generation, making sure we're recruiting new volunteers and people coming in quite young, so it is an important issue. the larger media crisis about facts mixed with opinions. I mean, the main thing I can say is, wow, I agree completely. I think it's a real problem. I remember once during the first Trump administration, I remember this particular thing, it struck me. I was reading a story in the Washington Post, which is a great newspaper. I would say it's a left-leaning newspaper, and that's okay. You can have left-leaning, right-leaning newspapers. I don't really think that's a massive problem. But this article was supposed to be a straight news article, but it was half like a rant against Donald Trump. And it was a rant I agreed with, but I also felt that I didn't trust that the journalism was fully the whole picture. It was some criticism about Trump University or something he had done in the past. And I thought, I've just read this very negative article about the history of Trump University, but do I have the whole story? I don't feel like I do, because the language in the article was this mixture of fact and opinion. And I thought, I would really rather read a very fact-based article. And I think that's one of my lessons for the media is put those things separate. It's okay to have your opinion columnist. That's fine. That's part of the broader product. But on your news reporting, you need to be really old-fashioned and go back to the basics of journalism and really be try everything you can to sort of be fair to all the sides and to really bring in the larger context. And then how good is Wikipedia for scouting medical information? Well, pretty good, actually. The interesting thing about the medical area, there's a project, Wiki Project Medicine. I tell the story in the book about Doc James, a great Wikipedian who was on our board for a while and things like this. They tend to be very fierce, Wiki Project Medicine. They don't put up with much nonsense. And, you know, there are little details like we avoid having dosage information in Wikipedia because Wikipedia is not a medical reference source. It's broad knowledge. And so you want to be careful, particularly if there's a danger around taking an incorrect dose. You don't want to sort of have Wikipedia telling you the wrong thing. That can be very dangerous. But broadly, we're pretty good. And one of the inspirations, I tell the story in the book of my daughter being born. She was very ill when she was born, and the condition she had, I didn't know anything about it because she was just born and I'd never heard of this before. And I went to the internet and I found a lot of mixed information and it wasn't very good. And that was one of my passions in the early days to create Wikipedia, is to say people really do need you know, fact-based information. I mean, there's a classic, it's kind of joking saying is like, never Google your symptoms because you'll be convinced very quickly that you've got some deadly disease because that's just the nature of the internet. Well, hopefully Wikipedia is calm and doesn't lead you down a scare path. It could neutrally talk about things. I mean, I tell the story in the book about, this is about trust in health information and the pandemic and some of the questions there where the health authorities first told us, don't bother with masks, they don't do any good, and then later told us, you must wear a mask everywhere. And that really diminished trust in Wikipedia. And that story is an interesting story about why did that happen, how did it come about, what are the lessons learned for the world to say people need to feel trust in health authorities and information that they're getting and not get contradictory information. So yeah, I hope Wikipedia is pretty good, but you know, always be very cautious.
Right. Jimmy Wales, it's been a pleasure speaking with you on behalf of this packed hall here. Thank you so much.
And again, I really regret that I couldn't be there. Some friends have been to the Mumbai Literary Festival and tell me it's great fun. Hopefully I'll come next year and I'll apply for my visa earlier.
Yes.
So that I can get in.
That's always a good lesson to take away. Thank you very much, and thank you all for being here and being a patient audience. Thank you.